that video showing the cartel quite literally dropping a bomb on what is believed to be a rival cartel down there. You see that bomb literally explode, being dropped from a drone. Cartel operatives have actually been given permission to shoot at U.S. Border Patrol agents.
It looks like Trump's big plan to crush the cartels is backfiring badly. Leaked footage from the border just exposed a major flaw in his strategy, and let's just say, it's not looking good. Instead of backing down, the cartels are fighting back harder than ever, and they're bringing military-style tactics with them. We're talking kamikaze drone attacks, full-blown shootouts with U.S. agents, and brutal retaliation tactics that Washington never saw coming. Historically, cartels have avoided targeting Americans to dodge diplomatic fallout, but now, experts warn that Trump's terrorist designation and threats of military strikes may have just pushed them over the edge. There's growing concern that cartel violence could spill beyond the border, putting U.S. citizens, businesses, and travelers at risk. Meanwhile, Mexico is seeing a cartel civil war spiral out of control thanks to power struggles and betrayals shaking up the underworld. Is Trump's strategy making things worse or better? Let's dive in, because this mess is just getting started. Now, as we already know, cartels have always been a major problem along the U.S. Mexico border, but since Trump started the crackdown, they've only gotten more aggressive. They're not just smuggling drugs and people anymore, they're literally opening fire on U.S. agents. One of the most intense incidents happened on January 27, 2025, when Border Patrol agents got into a shootout with suspected cartel members near Fronton, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley. It all went down around 1:30 p.m. on Fronton Island, a hotly disputed area between Texas and Mexico. Video footage from that day shows suspected cartel members running away after firing shots at agents. Luckily, no one was injured.
DHS sources telling News Nation that the cartel members were attempting to smuggle a group across the river, but none of them made it onto U.S. soil. News Nation was the only outlet on the scene as multiple agencies joined Border Patrol agents in the investigation. Drones were deployed for surveillance, and the elite border attack unit, which you're looking at now, was deployed. They were armed and ready and arrived to secure the area.
Our agents reported shots being fired towards their direction alongside the border. The shots were coming in from Mexico, and they did return fire. They took cover, and they immediately requested backup. Backup was rendered, and subsequently, we've been working with our local and state partners.
But things have taken an even darker turn. A newly released memo obtained by News Nation reveals that Mexican drug cartels are now ordering drone strikes and using explosives against U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP officers, and military personnel stationed at the border. The memo warns that cartels are planning to equip drones with explosives and launch kamikaze-style attacks on law enforcement.
This is kind of crazy here that the cartels authorize the use of weaponized drones, explosives against CBP personnel and U.S. law enforcement down there at the southern border. Now, they're actually being encouraged, of course, to remain cognizant and vigilant, but they're also being encouraged to use their long arms, Blake. I have never seen this in a CBP memo before. They say, wear your ballistic gear, yes, but they're telling them, hey, have your long arms. Yes, they are saying, watch out for these weaponized drones.
And it doesn't stop there. Another memo highlights multiple cartel-linked threats circulating on social media. Some posts openly encourage assassinating U.S. immigration and customs enforcement, ICE officers, while others push for more low-level harassment, like urging illegal immigrants to spit in or urinate on ICE agents' food. Trump's border czar, former ICE chief Tom Homan, has repeatedly emphasized how crucial it is to prevent leaks that could put law enforcement at risk. In January, his planned raid on Chicago had to be postponed after details were leaked and published by the Wall Street Journal. Homan didn't hold back, saying, anyone leaking law enforcement operations is putting officers in danger. Despite the setback, he personally led the Chicago raid just days later.
That operation was leaked, so we had to reschedule that one. We need the element of surprise, right, because officer safety issues. We don't want the bad guy to know we're coming to keep our officers more safe.
Cartel aggression along the border isn't exactly new, especially in Texas's Rio Grande Valley, which has long been a hotspot for smuggling and cartel activity. But this problem has been escalating for years. Back in 2023, Border Patrol leaders warned Congress that cartels were getting smarter and more advanced, using high-tech strategies to stay ahead of law enforcement. They're not just sneaking across the border anymore. They're using drones, camouflage, and cutting-edge tactics to avoid getting caught. Drones, in particular, have become one of the cartel's most powerful tools for smuggling drugs and people. According to Rio Grande Valley Sector Chief Gloria Chavez, there were a staggering 10,000 cartel drone incursions in just 1 year. These drones weren't just used for trafficking, they also helped criminals track Border Patrol agents, giving smugglers a massive advantage. Despite efforts to counter the threat, law enforcement found itself at a disadvantage. The cartels had way more drones, far more flight hours, and seemingly endless resources to keep expanding their operations. And it wasn't just Texas dealing with this crisis. Over in Arizona's Tucson sector, things had become just as dangerous, if not worse. Border Patrol agents reported that they weren't seeing families trying to cross anymore. Instead, most of the people attempting to enter were single adult men, many with extensive criminal records. These men weren't just sneaking in, they were wearing camouflage, running from agents, and even fighting back when confronted. A lot of them were previously deported felons who knew they weren't allowed back into the U.S., making them an even bigger threat to the communities they were trying to enter. Cartels had also stepped up their game when it came to smuggling people across. For an extra fee, migrants were given cell phones to help them navigate through the desert and mountains without being detected. Another trick? Flooding Border Patrol agents with massive groups at once, making it easier for criminals to slip through while officers were overwhelmed. And if that wasn't bad enough, cartels had even turned to social media to recruit American high schoolers to act as drivers for migrants once they made it across. It was a dangerous and illegal scheme, and in some cases, it turned deadly. But that didn't stop some teens, desperate for fast cash, from taking the risk. With cartel power reaching an all-time high, Trump's administration made a bold move on February 19, 2025, officially designating 8 Latin American crime organizations as foreign terrorist organizations, FTOs. Among them were 6 Mexican cartels: the Sinaloa Cartel, Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG, Northeast Cartel, Gulf Cartel, United Cartels, and the Michoacan family. While all 6 were flagged as major threats, 2 stood out: Sinaloa and CJNG. These cartels aren't just powerful, they are among the most violent and sophisticated criminal organizations in the world. A little background on the Sinaloa Cartel. It has come a long way from its humble beginnings in the 1960s and 70s. It was part of the Guadalajara Cartel and was started by peasant families in Sinaloa, Mexico, and eventually grew into one of the most powerful and feared drug trafficking empires in the world. Unlike a typical gang with a single leader, the cartel operates through a network of independent cells, making it incredibly difficult to dismantle. It also has strong connections with other criminal organizations across the hemisphere, expanding its influence far beyond Mexico. The cartel became a household name, largely due to infamous leaders like Joaquin El Chapo Guzman Loera and Ismael El Mayo Zambada. But one of its darkest moments came in 1985 with the brutal murder of DEA agent Enrique "Kiki" Camarena, a crime that changed the course of U.S. Mexico drug enforcement. Camarena was kidnapped by police officers working for the Guadalajara cartel and then for information before being killed. His death led to a massive U.S. investigation, resulting in 10 trials in Los Angeles for the Mexican nationals involved. The case still casts a shadow over U.S.-Mexico relations, especially after one of the key figures, Rafael Caro Quintero, was controversially released from a Mexican prison in 2013. His capture in July 2022 reignited conversations about Camarena's murder and the larger battle against cartel violence. But there's an even darker twist. Multiple journalists, former DEA and CIA officers, and Mexican law enforcement officials have suggested that the CIA may have been involved in Camarena's murder. The theory? Camarena had allegedly uncovered U.S. intelligence agencies using drug money to fund the Contras in Nicaragua, and that knowledge made him a target. The CIA, of course, has denied these claims, but the speculation continues. Corruption has also played a major role in the cartel's success. Some of Mexico's highest-ranking officials have been caught taking bribes, including Genaro Garcia Luna, the former Secretary of Public Security. During El Chapo's 2018 trial, his partner Jesus Zambada Garcia testified that he personally handed Garcia Luna suitcases stuffed with $3 million in cash, straight-up bribery at the highest level. But karma came back around. In 2019, Garcia Luna was arrested in the U.S. for taking those bribes, and by 2024, he was sentenced to 38 years behind bars. Not exactly the legacy he was hoping for. But even with these high-profile arrests, the Sinaloa cartel is still running the show, especially along the western U.S.-Mexico border, where it remains the dominant force in drug trafficking. It has also taken over fentanyl production, teaming up with Chinese chemical suppliers to keep the deadly drug flowing into the U.S. However, the cartel is currently in the middle of an all-out civil war thanks to a shocking betrayal that has rocked its leadership. In July 2024, longtime cartel boss El Mayo Zambada was arrested in El Paso, Texas. But here's the twist. He wasn't just caught by law enforcement. He was reportedly set up by his own godson, Joaquin Guzman Lopez, the son of his former partner, El Chapo. Zambada claims he was lured into an ambush near Culiacan, where he was kidnapped by 6 armed men in military gear and then forcibly handed over to U.S. authorities. This backstabbing move set off a war between the cartel's 2 powerful factions, Los Chapitos, led by El Chapo's sons, Ivan and Jesus Guzman Salazar, and La Mayisa, led by Zambada's son, Ismael Zambada Siqueiros, aka El Mayito Flaco. Right now, the worst of the violence is centered in Sinaloa, but experts say it's only a matter of time before it spreads across Mexico, and possibly even into the U.S.
Townspeople in Culiacan are having to adjust to a new reality. One where bodies turn up on the street daily. One where schools are closed, businesses have reduced hours. And 2 weeks after the start of a civil war in the Sinaloa cartel, sparked by the arrest in the United States of one of its founders, there's no end in sight.
And then there's the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG, arguably one of the most ruthless criminal organizations the U.S. has ever classified. CJNG broke away from the Sinaloa cartel in 2009, rising from the ashes of the Milenio cartel. In just over a decade, it built a reputation for extreme brutality, military-grade weapons, and even bizarre PR stunts, like handing out supplies to civilians to win public favor. Under the leadership of Nemesio El Mencho Oseguera, CJNG doesn't just operate in the shadows, it makes bold, terrifying statements. One of the cartel's most infamous moments was the 2020 assassination attempt on Mexico City's then-security chief, Omar Harfuch. This wasn't some secretive hit in the middle of the night, it was a full-scale ambush in broad daylight, proving just how fearless and powerful the cartel had become. With both the Sinaloa cartel and CJNG growing bolder, their designation as terrorist organizations marked a turning point in U.S. policy. It isn't just about fighting drug trafficking anymore. It is about confronting cartels like global security threats. After officially designating cartels as terrorist organizations, Trump wasted no time beefing up border security. Thousands of U.S. military personnel were sent to defend the southern border, and the U.S. Coast Guard was deployed to keep an eye on American shores. By February 2025, around 5,000 active duty troops were stationed at the border. By March, that number was expected to jump to 9,000, not counting the additional reinforcements from the National Guard and state forces. Meanwhile, the CIA ramped up its drone surveillance over Mexico, deploying MQ-9 Reaper drones, high-tech, military-grade aircraft capable of tracking cartel movements and labs deep inside enemy territory.
So we're seeing these kind of surveillance drones, if you will, crossing that international airspace, and they're big. They're MQ-9 Reaper drones.
But here's the kicker. This drone operation didn't start with Trump. It actually began under Biden as a classified intel gathering mission. Back then, the drones weren't armed. They were just there to spy, using advanced sensors to detect drug labs and pass that information to Mexican authorities. The problem? Mexico wasn't exactly rushing to take action. Sure, they made some arrests, but overall, cartel operations kept running smoothly. Trump and his CIA director, John Ratcliffe, aren't playing the waiting game. They've been vocal about stepping things up, and the first move? Expanding drone surveillance. More flights, more intel, and possibly a much bigger plan in the works. As of right now, those MQ-9 drones are still unarmed, but for how long? Experts say it's only a matter of time before the U.S. starts treating cartel strongholds the same way it dealt with ISIS, potentially launching airstrikes on labs and key cartel locations.
Look, if the cartels won't surrender or stop, then the next step is Trump will start to drop drones on them. And I fully expect that might happen.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Army's 7th Special Forces Group has been teaming up with Mexico's Naval Marine Corps, training them for joint operations against the cartels. But let's be real, this kind of cooperation didn't just happen overnight. Trump had to apply serious pressure, even threatening major tariffs against Mexico for what he called their failure to act against the cartels. Mexico, of course, wasn't happy about that. President Sheinbaum fired back, rejecting the idea that the Mexican government is somehow working with the cartels. In a bold statement, she said, "If such an alliance exists anywhere, it's in U.S. armories that sell high-powered weapons to these criminal groups." And honestly, she's not wrong. This isn't the first time Mexico has pointed the finger at the U.S. for fueling cartel violence. Back in 2012, then President Felipe Calderón slammed America's lax gun laws, blaming them for turning the U.S. into a shopping center for cartel weapons. The stats back it up too. Studies show that a massive portion of the military-style rifles, .50 caliber sniper rifles, and even grenade launchers used by the cartels were originally purchased legally in the U.S., then smuggled across the border.
The smuggling from Mexico to the United States is a two-way street. You see drugs being taken from Mexico to the United States, you see money and guns coming south. Sometimes it could be in the very same track cars that used to take drugs up north, they used to take guns down south.
And if you remember Operation Fast and Furious, you know just how bad it got. Between 2006 and 2011, the ATF let thousands of guns walk into cartel hands, thinking they could track them. Spoiler alert, they couldn't. Instead, those weapons were used in mass killings across Mexico, making it one of the most disastrous government blunders in recent history. So yeah, relations between the US and Mexico have been tense, with both sides blaming each other for the cartel crisis. But Trump's tariff threats seem to have done the trick. President Sheinbaum eventually agreed to strengthen border security and crack down on cartel operations. As part of that deal, the U.S. also promised to step up efforts to stop the flow of weapons into Mexico, which Sheinbaum insists is one of the biggest reasons the cartels are so heavily armed in the first place. And just like that, Mexico wasted no time making moves. Shortly after agreeing to work with Trump, Mexico's Secretary of Security and Civilian Protection, Omar Garcia Harfuch, announced a major cartel bust. His team captured Ricardo Mando R. Gonzalez Sauceda, a high-ranking leader of the Cartel del Noreste, CDN, a brutal offshoot of Los Zetas. According to authorities, he was heavily involved in extortion and had multiple arrest warrants for homicide and kidnapping in Nuevo León, right near the Texas border. Gonzalez Sauceda wasn't just some random member. He was reportedly the right-hand man to Juanito Cisneros Trevino, the acting boss of CDN Los Zetas. He also ran a feared group of cartel enforcers known as Los Chukis, named after the killer doll from Child's Play, Chucky. But the arrests didn't stop there. Over in Culiacan, a major Sinaloa cartel stronghold, authorities took down several top cartel figures, delivering a massive blow to Los Chapitos, the faction led by El Chapo's sons. One of the biggest names taken in was Jose Angel Canobio, aka El Güerito, Little Blonde One. He was a key lieutenant for Ivan Archibaldo Guzman, one of El Chapo's sons, and was reportedly in charge of his security. So yeah, this one hit hard. Another major figure arrested was Kevin Alonzo Gil Acosta, better known as El Doscientos or El Cabo, the corporal. Authorities say he was a key player in arms trafficking, extortion, and attacks on law enforcement, as well as overseeing security for Los Chapitos. And it didn't end there. Mauro Alejandro N., a pilot accused of secretly transporting Ismael El Mayo Zambada to the U.S. before his arrest, was also taken into custody. On the surface, Trump's aggressive cartel crackdown seemed like it was working. High-profile arrests, increased military presence, and a tough stance on fentanyl. But now, it's starting to backfire in a major way. By officially designating cartels as terrorist organizations, Trump hoped it would justify stepping up U.S. intervention. But here's the catch, it's legally messy as hell. First off, this means any Mexican citizen, even loosely tied to a cartel, whether willingly or by force, could be denied asylum or deported under terrorism laws. That alone has sparked outrage from immigrant rights groups. But it gets even messier. This technically gives the US the grounds to launch military strikes inside Mexico. And Mexico, they're not having it. President Claudia Sheinbaum already made it crystal clear. If the US tries to send in military forces or airstrikes, it will be seen as an act of war. The last thing the US needs is to escalate a conflict with its closest neighbor over a drug war.
We will defend our sovereignty and seek cooperation and coordination with the US. They can act in their territory according to their regulations and their constitution.
Trump's tariff threats may have worked at first, but now Mexico is fighting back in a way that could hurt everyday Americans, the economy. Mexico is one of the U.S.'s biggest trading partners, and Scheinbaum has already hinted at retaliatory tariffs that could make everything from groceries to cars more expensive. And if Mexico stops cooperating on immigration, that could make the border crisis even worse. And then there's the fentanyl crisis, one of the biggest reasons Trump said he needed to go after the cartels in the first place. But here's the thing, fentanyl is still flooding into the U.S. Despite all the extra border patrols and military presence, cartel supply chains haven't collapsed. And all those big fentanyl busts we keep hearing about, they just prove that tons of the stuff is still making it through. The real issue? Production starts in China. But instead of addressing that problem, Trump is only going after the cartels, which means he's attacking the middlemen, not the actual source. And if that wasn't bad enough, the cartels aren't backing down. They're leveling up. The second Trump labeled them terrorists and sent thousands of troops to the border, they saw it as a declaration of war. Now they're hitting back hard. Attacks on U.S. agents have skyrocketed. Rival factions are uniting against a common enemy, and they're using military-style tactics that are straight out of a war zone. Take what happened in January 2025 near Fronton, Texas. Instead of running when they got caught smuggling migrants, cartel members opened fire on Border Patrol agents. And now, leaked memos are exposing just how far they're willing to go. The cartels are actively planning assassinations of U.S. law enforcement and even targeting military personnel. So, if Trump thought he could just wipe them out, it looks like he may have just made them even more dangerous. But now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Trump's plan is actually going to work, or is it just fueling even more chaos? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm reading all of them. And if this video made you see things in a new light, trust me, there's way more where that came from. Check out our other deep dives, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you're always in the loop. You won't want to miss what's coming next.